All right, so we're back in live streaming today. Um, I think the last time I streamed was probably over a month or two ago. So I actually decided to take a step back since my last live stream and really try to figure out what it is exactly that I'm building because I had a pretty good idea, um, big picture wise, kind of what I'm going for, but the last live stream when I was kind of getting into some of the weeds and stuff, I just kind of felt like I wasn't really sure how some of the finer details work together. So I decided to kind of take a step back, kind of look at the kind of the big picture, what it is that I'm trying to build, and then actually go into some of the finer details and kind of scope out what I'm looking for. And what I did is I decided to from all my notes and from all my ideas, I decided to kind of write up almost like a concept of what it is that I'm trying to build. So this is gonna kind of help drive my design and implementation. So I wanted to just kind of take a moment and kind of go through some of the big features that I'm looking to build and what it is exactly that this app or system is looking to do. So to kind of start off, so big picture, my goal is to build a system that makes it super easy to rapidly build beautiful web pages. So with modern web development, there's like so many tools and frameworks and things that you can use, but a lot of times it takes a lot to try to figure it out, learn how to configure it, set it up in your app, and then besides that, you just have just the general tools that you have to use. You have to use Git. You have to um, have an IDE usually to make things easier to edit. You gotta have Node, npm, all these things to compile the front end assets, and it becomes a lot. And so a lot of times it's hard to kind of keep up with where web development is going. And so um, what I was kind of envisioning is an app that you can kind of go into. Like there's a dashboard that you log into, and then you just begin to build, go straight into the code and build what you want to build without having to go through um, all that configuration, tooling, and setup. So that's kind of the goal of this. So the basic premise is going to be we're going to have a way to build collections of data, and from these collections of data, we'll be able to take them and use them in different parts of the front end and display them however we want. So pretty much everything starts with data. And so um, and I guess what I'm calling it is collections. So we're going to have collections of data. And so imagine we have a collection for pages. So it's just a simple way to create a simple page. You have your title, your content, pretty straightforward. But imagine you have something a little more maybe nuanced or a little more detailed where you have like these team member pages. And so these team member pages, they might have attributes like, like a team member would have like a first name, a last name. They might have a job title, a profile picture, a department that they're part of. And so yeah, you can just kind of create like a simple page and kind of list out all that information for each user and then just copy that content over for every user that you're building. But of course, that's not going to be maintainable long term because what if you need to change maybe the template or how it looks for all the team members? Now you're having to go back and edit all those pages. So the idea here is that you define these collections, and these collections have the specific data fields that you need to collect for each entity, and then you can use that data however you want on the front end. And so let me make this a little bigger. Um, the dashboard is going to pretty much have a way to create these collections. I'm just calling it collection builder. And so really all it is we have a certain number of fields, different types of fields that we'll provide. So you have your text area, radio buttons, checkboxes, images, dates, things like that. And you'll be able to build like this form. Um, you'll be able to build this form that you'll be using to manage the data for this collection. And so for now, we're keeping it pretty straightforward. We're going to have one big column here on the left, another big column here on the right, and you'll just be able to drag and drop fields into those specific places. Of course, we'll have field options. You can name the field. You can add like placeholders, default value, things like that. Add validation rules, just your basic stuff. And so the goal here is like what I noticed is for the company that I've worked for, we have our own proprietary CMS that we build, and one of the things that we did is we built these custom CRUD pages for our customers. So if they wanted a team member page, we would go and we would build that for them. And so when they log into the web, into the admin, they'll be able to see all the team members, add team members, things like that. And we've had over like 300 sites that we manage, and so for a lot of these sites we had to keep rebuilding those. So we had to build a controller, build the data model, build the migrations, and so it was like this repetitive task over and over again. So what this seeks to do is kind of abstract a lot of that, so that you can just use a drag and drop interface, and then once you set up the data fields that you need for your collection, the CRUD is already going to be available for you. So you never have to build another CRUD again. So that's part of the goal with this system is to not have to manually code things that you don't need to code if it's repetitive, like a CRUD usually is. But the goal also is to be able to still provide a way to jump into the code and do what you want to do when you need it. So like, especially when you're building things like views and stuff, like it's nice to be able to code that instead of using some kind of a interface to try to build out a template. It gets kind of clumsy. So we're gonna have field options, field roles, field visibility. This is gonna be a way to toggle the visibility of fields based on the values of other fields. So let's say you will have like a checkbox that's checked. If it's checked, you want it to maybe show another box. If it's unchecked, it'll hide the box, things like that. I'm not going to go into too much detail about that. And then, of course, we can create pageables. So pageables are a certain type of collection. So we can have simple collections that just kind of house data, but pageables are kind of an extension of collections where these collections specifically will have like a URL on the front end, and so when you go to that URL, it'll display it. So essentially, each entity in the collection is going to have its own page on the front end. So that's why I'm calling them pageables. Might have to figure out a better name for that, but I'm just calling it that for now. And so, of course, like when you kind of toggle this pageable feature, we're going to have some additional fields that show up that are related to this pageable feature. Of course, it just kind of lists out some of the fields that we're going to have. Yeah, I'm not going to go into too much detail. I actually went through and listed out all the different field types that I'm going to support and the different options for them and rules. I'm not going to go through each one because that's going to be boring, but it's just more for me, just kind of know what it is that I need to kind of support in the app. And so, like I was saying, when you build a collection type, you now have a place in the dashboard to manage them. So, we'll have like an index page, which will be like your standard table. It's going to have your columns, your attributes, and then, you can search, filter, manage the kind of columns you want to show on there, bulk update features, bulk delete, things like that. So just your standard index page CRUD. This kind of goes into some of the finer details about how it will work, and of course we're going to have a way to create and edit items. So when you go to create an item, based on the fields that you set up in the collection builder, you'll see a form so you can enter in data. So this is kind of like, imagine that's like a drop down little content area, like a rich text editor. It's like a regular text field, like an image field. It's just pretty basic, pretty straightforward. And so this is kind of where it gets into some of the features that will be, I guess, specific or new to this CMS that maybe might stand out from other systems. And so my goal is to be able to pretty much build content using blocks. So one of the things that we've realized, or I've realized from building hundreds of sites, is that sites are usually separated into blocks. So you have like your header, you have your navigation, you have like your homepage content. You might have like a call to action, a footer, and then even within that you have your own block. So within that homepage content, usually things are separated into separate sections. So let me see if I can maybe bring up an example site and kind of show. Might be easier to show than tell. So yeah, this is one of the sites that we built, and as you can see here, like you can literally separate each part into a separate block. So you have like your header, this is now your homepage content, all of this. We usually do like a little call to action here at the end, and then your footer, and then like a little sub footer. And of course, if we look at the homepage content itself, this is also broken up into blocks. So we have like this slider block, almost like the splash. We have this little informational section. This goes into some of the services that they provide, so we can break that into one big block of services, and then each of those we can even break down into smaller blocks of the service items. Little gallery, separate, another block, testimonials block, and like a little maybe like informational, I guess, section that kind of goes into a little bit about the company and what they do. So if you look at each block, they consist of three main components. So you have your data, right? And so your data is what's being displayed. For example, let's go to maybe like a simpler block, like this one right here. This is a simple example. So in this case, you have a few pieces of data. So you have like the title, you have the paragraph, or like the content, and then you have this background image. So that'll be the data, and then of course once you have that data, you display that data, and the way you display it is using HTML. So so you have your data, you have your markup, and then of course you have your styles. And depending on what kind of front-end framework you're using, sometimes your styles kind of go in with your markup if you're using like Tailwind. But imagine you actually have separate CSS for it. So you have those three elements: you have your data, your markup, and your styles. And so my goal is to be able to build these separate block items using this new dashboard. So imagine you have something like this, where you go to create a let's say you go to create a page, like a home page, for example, and for the content you break it up into these separate blocks, and each block has its own data, it has its own markup, it has its own styles. And then of course once we render on the front end, we combine it all. But when you're building those separate sections, you're really only concerned about that specific section. And so the system is going to have a way to build these separate sections. And so imagine you have something like this, where you have like a little preview that shows what your template is going to look like, and then you define those three components for that block. And so of course you define the data. So in this case, this little example block, it has a title, it has a paragraph, and it has an image. And then using this data, you can build your template. And so you see here we have some HTML here, and then we're rendering this template. And this is kind of using Laravel's Blade syntax. And then of course you can add your styles for this block. This just uses Sass. So you just you have a class that you define on your template, and then you use that class to create the styles for your block. And what's nice is because Sass allows you to nest styles within a class, you can easily add styles to a block, and it only pertains to that specific block. So that's kind of in general how it's going to look like. And so my idea is we're going to have like this content builder, and this content builder is going to have different blocks, and each block you can click to drag and move around, remove it. You can of course click to edit it, and so that's kind of for the developer. So the developer is going to set up that block or that content. But then let's say you have somebody who's not, who doesn't know how to code. For them, all they need to do is they click on one of these blocks, and they're able to edit the data for it. So right here they'll have a way to replace the image. They'll have a so like a text box to edit the text, and a paragraph. And what's cool is going to be as you're editing this stuff, it's going to update in real time. Yeah, and then so one of the other things too that I want to support is responsive design. So there'll be a way to click and drag these sections to kind of see what they look like at different breakpoints. So yeah, so that's kind of the content builder. And the thing here to know is that like you can pull in data from, so you can define the fields and then have a way for the person to enter in data, or you can pull that data from already existing collections. So let's say, for example, this little testimonial section. Well, chances are we're going to have a section that already houses those testimonials. And so what we'll be able to do is tell this section to pull the testimonials from that testimonials collection. And then in our template, we'll just be able to iterate over each testimonial, for each testimonials as testimonial, and then we'll be able to display it. So that's kind of the goal with the system is that you should be able to pull in data from anywhere into anywhere and display it however you want. So moving on here, sections are gonna be kind of like a place where you manage like your headers, your footers, those kinds of repetitive sections that are kind of the same on every single page. And they're going to work much in the same way as the content builder blocks. You'll be able to define your data, your template, and your styles. So yeah, not much different there than the content builder. So layouts. So we're going to allow the developer to create the layout that they want to create. So a lot of times CMS systems will kind of box you into certain layouts, and you're kind of restricted to how you're displaying your page. But with layouts, you can build any layout that you want to build, and you just kind of create the markup for it. And so layouts, they really consist of sections. So if you think about like even this website in general, so what do you have? You have like the header at the top, you have like the content section, you have the call to action, footer, and then the sub footer. And this pretty much repeats on every single page. So header, content section, call to action, footer, sub footer. So the layout will let you define what sections it uses and how those sections are displayed. And they don't necessarily have to go in order. If you need a section to go side by side, it's up to you. You create the markup that you wish to use on your for your website. And so then, so those are kind of the main building blocks. So, so you have your layout. Once you create your layout, you have your sections. Sections allow you to use that content builder to create the section that you need by defining the data, defining the markup, defining the styles. And then, you build out your different collections. Once you've built out your collections, you can now display them on the front end. You can now pull them into different pages and display them within the content. Um, yes, that's kind of the main idea. And then, of course, there's going to be just some basic CMS things. We'll have like a settings page where you can just manage like the site name, the phone number, things like that. We'll have a place to enter in scripts. So we have to think of this system or this website as a whole. And so oftentimes you're going to want to include things like scripts on the front end. So we're just going to create a place for that where we'll be able to define these scripts and just kind of put them into the page and kind of even define what pages we want to show them on. So in most cases, we're going to be adding styles within each block, because usually the styles are only concerned, or they're only really available, or only matter within the context of the block that you're adding them. And so that's why we usually add them within the block. But sometimes there may be cases where you want to add general styles. And so, for example, if you're using Sass, you're going to want a place to define your variables, right? So you can do that, or I don't know, maybe you need something for your layout, some layout specific styles. So we'll just have a place to add general styles, and these will kind of be compiled along with all your other styles for the front end. Of course, there's going to be a way to manage admin and admin permissions. So you'll be able to add administrators, and you'll be able to select what collections they have access to. So whether they can read, write, delete, things like that. URL management. So it's important for SEO and just organization that URLs are clean. So we're just gonna have a place where you can see all the URLs on your website, and kind of see where they're coming from, see what collection they're part of, and then just so you kind of almost have like an overview of all the URLs. It just kind of helps keep things organized. 301 redirects, just a simple way to redirect one URL to another. It's another important feature for SEO. And of course, forms. So we're going to provide, for now, a simple way to create forms. So forms are one of the ways that customers or users can get in contact with the website or the company, and so it's important that we have that. So so some basic settings for the form. Kind of define the fields that you want, the types of fields, and you'll be able to pull those in on the front end and display them on pretty much any page that you want to display. And then, of course, when people submit them, there's going to be a place in the back end to see all those form submissions, sort through them, just manage them. Menu builder. So menus are another essential part of websites usually. Kind of helps keep the website organized, but also gives the user an easy way to navigate the website. So of course we're going to have a way to either manually define menu items. So you'll see a list of all the available URLs on the website. You'll be able to click and drag, put them in, nest them if you need to, or you can even add direct links. And then oftentimes we have scenarios where we actually want to just generate dynamic menus. So let's say we're trying to display a menu of all the team members. Well, instead of having to manually click and drag every single team member to build your menu, and then when you add a new member, you have to go back and update your menu. Instead, you can have like this dynamically generated menu. So you kind of select where you want to pull those items from. You can add some filters. Like in this example here, you can select that you want team members from a certain department. So department is board members, or department is management, for example. And of course, you can sort them. There's also an option to either collapse the child items or just display one one menu of all the items. So yeah, just a simple way to build menus, and so that you can pull those into your templates, and display them. So for media management, originally I was thinking to do something like a little media manager where you can upload files, upload images, kind of manage them, and even maybe do things like crop and resize. But um, I mean, although that would be nice, it's actually not a very important part of the system. So my goal right now is to build a working product, and um, so because of that, I'm kind of putting media on the back burner, because really, um, if we kind of look at our our pages and content builders, like we'll have a place to select images, and so I mean, if a person needs to resize an image or crop them, they'll just do it before they upload it. Um, so yeah, so we'll just have a simple way to select media files. It gets uploaded directly into your content. And then in the future, if we do decide to build out a media manager, we can just gather all of those uploaded files and kind of store them in some centralized way, and then we'll be able to manage them, display them, and whatnot. And of course, the last part of this is the front end framework. So I think I want to provide two options. So Tailwind is kind of the new kid on the block, and I've been using it a little bit, and I love it. I just kind of love that kind of the simplicity of it. But I also love Bootstrap because it kind of has these predefined components that you can use, and you don't have to manually build out a lot of your styles. And so I think what I'll have is I'll have two options. So when you're setting up the site, you'll be able to either select Tailwind or Bootstrap, and the website will just already be configured for that. And I'll probably even have a way to switch. So let's say you create a website and you thought, okay, maybe I'll use Bootstrap, and then you decided, no, I'll switch to Tailwind. So maybe there'll be a way to switch between the two. Um, but yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. That's the gist of it. But yeah, I mean, so I don't. So this was important for me to do because it helped me figure out what it is exactly that I'm trying to build. Because I think, like I was saying earlier, when I was working the last time, I was like getting into some of the nitty gritty stuff, and it was actually kind of hard to figure out how I wanted to implement it because I didn't know how this thing fit into the bigger picture. And so this was a nice process. Like this took a lot of time, and I still feel like maybe I'm not exactly finished. Like there's still some parts of this that I'm still kind of trying to figure out, but maybe I'll be able to figure those things out while I'm building them. But what was nice is that I was able to kind of go back and forth between looking at the big picture, and kind of seeing how the whole system works together, but then also going into some of the finer details. And then I was able to kind of go back and forth. So I'll look at the big picture, go through it, go into finer details, figure those out. And what I realized was that as I kind of did that, kind of went, the back and forth, I realized that like both are important. So like I was able to define some of the finer detail stuff, and that helped drive my bigger picture. And then once I was like kind of figured some bigger picture items out, it helped define how some of the other finer details going to work. And so it was almost like this back and forth, almost like a dance that I had to do between big picture, finer details to kind of figure out what it is exactly that I'm trying to build. So yeah, that's kind of the gist of it. I think there's still some ways that I can improve on communicating maybe exactly what the system does and what it aims to do. I think for me, um, I've kind of experienced the pains of having to repeatedly code the same stuff over and over again, and just the um, what is it called? Kind of the struggle of having to kind of configure stuff and use a bunch of tooling and things like that. So I just kind of wanted a simpler system. So I think really the main reason I'm building this is for myself. Like I've had this idea for I think maybe um, I don't know. It's been a few years. I think I kind of had the general idea, and then over the years I kind of developed it, and I got more ideas along the way. But um, really, I guess it's like I want to build something that I think will be beneficial, almost as an experiment to actually test it out. So take it out of this prototype idea, abstract sphere, and put it into reality to so I can test it out, play with it, figure out if it's actually beneficial or not. So that's kind of the big picture. And so now I'm kind of figuring out like, oh, where am I going to start? Because kind of looking at this, like, although like this is actually a scoped down version of what I originally had in mind, this is still a lot. And so I think my original idea was to kind of go through and actually build, like for example, like maybe start with the collection builder, and I'll go through and build all the different fields and have that set up, and then move on to like building the CRUD, where you can manage those items, and then kind of almost like build each feature individually, almost maybe not individually, but one at a time, and then at the end you'll have a way to build a website. But as I was kind of thinking about it, I mean, I guess that approach would be valid and it would work, but I just wasn't feeling it. I just kind of I didn't like that because I just kind of felt like this process of having to complete one step before building another step um, just didn't sit well with me because like um, I guess what I wanted to see instead was I want to build something that'll work end to end. So I think I came across an article once that kind of explained it, and so I guess the analogy they brought up was like they brought like a stack of pancakes, and so oftentimes I think the way we think about it is like we'll build like almost one layer at a time, and then we'll build like this layer, that layer, and then once we build all layers, the whole product will work. But the problem with that is like with each layer you have to like um, you then have to integrate each layer with the other layer, and so there may be issues with that you didn't foresee, and so now you may have to go back and rework some of the things in the layers that you've already built. And so the author of the article, I forget exactly who it was, may have to link it or something, but pretty much what they suggested was instead of doing a layer at a time, almost do like a slice of a pancake. So imagine like you're cutting like a cake, and so you slice out the slice of the stack of pancakes, and that's what you build. And so I think that's the approach I actually want to take, um, because like even just kind of thinking about like this collection builder, like there's gonna be a lot of like logic and a lot of work that's gonna go into building every single field type, and then all the different configurations and roles for every field type, and it's just going to be tedious work. And like besides the troubles with like integration, things like that, I think there's also the emotional part of it. Like I want to be able to be motivated to build this system, and I think like if I get like maybe too in the weeds in one of these layers, like um, I don't know, maybe I'll just like get bored and stop doing it. So my goal now is instead of trying to build this whole system and then figuring out if it's going to work, I want to actually um, build something maybe simpler, maybe that doesn't have all the different field types, but that I can use to build an entire website. And so what I'm thinking is maybe taking an example website like the one I was showing, because it's a pretty straightforward design, and building a system around one of these websites. So um, instead of kind of like thinking about all the different features that I can build and support and then building the system around that, I actually want like almost like a real live website design that I'm building to almost drive my implementation. And so that's what I'm thinking. And so this is going to simplify things a lot because um, a simple website like this is not going to need all the various fields here. Like, I think literally I'm gonna need like a text field, like maybe a text area field, image upload, maybe like a rich text editor. And that's probably it. So that's like 4 fields instead of 23 that I'll have to build. And so I think I'm gonna start there. I'll start by building this collection builder with a few of those simple fields, so I can build collections, and then just kind of define some simpler options for them. Like I probably won't even do all the rules just yet, just the rules that I need, like required. Um, I mean, that might be the only field that I'll need. I might not even need things like field visibility for this website. Um, I'll definitely need like the pageable option, so I'm going to build that because that's going to be a core component of pages. But yeah, so build a simple content builder with the 4 fields, build a CRUD management system, and so kind of have all these different parts that I need for this system. I want to build like a simpler version of them that will get me to the place where I can build a full featured website with my system. And then once I kind of have that in place, then I can kind of build upon that and add the other various fields that I need, and options and rules and things like that. Because I think the other thing too is that what it'll help me with is um, not only will I get a working product sooner, but being able to actually test this product out with a real live website design where I'm actually building something with it, it's actually going to help me, like, um, maybe it's going to test out the system, and it's going to test out some of these ideas because this all sounds good, but you don't really know if it's going to work or if it's going to be beneficial or even if it's going to work well until you actually use it. And so I want to make sure that I'm focusing on the important parts of the system first, which is building the actual website and not all the other finer details of, all the different types of fields that I want to support. Because, yeah, that's important, and I would want all those different fields before I release my first version. But, having, for example, like I don't know, maybe like a tags or like a belongs to many field is not as important as having maybe something like the content builder that works well. That when because like the content builder is where you're going to spend most of your time building the website. So I want to make sure that works well for the developer before I go in and try to almost like make a full featured application. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to take some time, kind of give an update of kind of where I'm at and where I've been, because I haven't streamed in a while. So this is kind of the goal and the plan for this system, and so I'm excited to finally begin to start or continue building this. And so I have actually started. I got like a basic I guess scaffold up. So I just got a new Laravel site set up, and then I found a Tailwind admin dashboard, a simple but nicely designed dashboard that I really like. Um, and so what I did is I kind of got those things into place within my Laravel application. So I kind of have the basic things ready for me to start implementing some of the features. So yeah, that's really all I wanted to share today. I'm gonna probably be starting on building this collection builder um, first. Um, so I imagine probably sometime within the next few days I'll be streaming again, and then we'll just jump straight into building some of the stuff. Well, maybe not building yet. I think I want to take some time to like define maybe how I'm gonna build it, but we'll actually be able to start working towards coding coding stuff. So yeah, thank you for joining me today, and I guess I'll see you guys next time.